Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Ishvaro Guratmeti Murti Veda Vibhagine Vyomabda Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Sava Vedanta Sedanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Satguru Pranatoshmaha Om Om Shanti 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 Om. Hello everyone. So we have a very, very small group. Shall we begin today by Vedanta meditation we did last time, right? I'm going to change my server here, okay? Okay. Let's see if this one is going to be better. We have somebody else showing up here. Maybe there is someone new. Marta. Do we know Marta? Huh?
Not yet.
Hello, Marta.
Oi. Boa
Oi.
tarde.
Boa tarde. Você entende inglês?
Mais ou menos.
Ok. E você veio...
Vai ser só em inglês, Arlindo?
Posso ver você para mim saber quem você é?
Pode, deixa eu ver aqui. Iniciar vídeo, não é? Oi.
Oi, tudo bem?
Eu entrei tem uma semana no Facebook. Estou estudando Vedanta há 2 semanas.
Bacana. Marta, você entende inglês?
Mais ou menos. Só vai ser em inglês, só? Não vai ter tradução?
Essa é uma classe em inglês, tá? Só para você saber.
Entendi.
As minhas aulas em português são sábado, das 10 a meio-dia, e domingo, aos 10 a meio-dia, tá?
Eu posso tentar ouvir só para ver se eu entendo?
Você pode permanecer o tanto quanto você queira, e se você quiser ou precisar sair, você simplesmente deixa a classe, tá? Sem precisar dizer nada, tá?
Combinado, obrigada.
Ok. Claudio, now we begin from Vedanta meditation, or while you have yoga, I guess, huh?
Yeah, yes.
While you have yoga. So we looked into Vedanta meditation. We spoke extensively about Vedanta meditation being nothing but Nididhyasana. And it's a strange statement because Nididhyasana actually means assimilation. Yeah? But we can't really assimilate something unless we are working on it. So, and then, Vedanta meditation is working the teachings in our minds so that they can be assimilated. Okay, it's another way to put it. Okay, so there are different ways we look into Nididhyasana, and we have seen it several times. I'm not going to be repeating myself, but fundamentally, this is the meditation proposed by Vedanta. And then we say, wow, this is the meditation proposed by Vedanta. And then what is the Upasana proposed by Vedanta? Because we say that the whole process is Karma, Dhamma, Upasana, Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. So what is the difference? So Upasana is meditation. It's a kind of effort to keep the mind on a symbol of the self. Okay, we keep in the mind on a symbol of the self. This is a discipline that is going to be very helpful later on when we begin doing the final discrimination between consciousness and the intellect, following the subtle logic presented by Vedanta, by the Mahavakyas of Vedanta. So Upasana is development of one-pointedness, a focused mind, by bringing the mind to one point. And this point is somehow a symbol of the self. Okay, so it's we are going to use the best possible symbol at the beginning. We may say, oh no, I like to focus on the prana, I like to focus on the tip of my nose, anything as long as you see that as the Lord. If you see the prana as the Lord, the tip of your nose as the Lord, and then your meditation is not only about bringing focus, but it's also, keep your mind, hold your mind on the Lord. Then it's no longer just a spiritual technique, but it's a religious effort. Okay, so we are doing that in the beginning, bringing our mind to a symbol of Ishvara, and then later on we're going to bring our mind to something that symbolizes the self, and the self is beyond Ishvara, Jiva, Jagat. So how are we going to bring the mind to something that symbolizes Brahman, conscious awareness? So if conscious awareness is not an object that can be symbolized, it's not really an object of meditation, contemplation, focus, because it's not an object. So we're going to have to use another object that symbolizes Brahman. And what would be this object? Who can tell me?
Knowledge, the scriptures.
Yeah.
The scriptures. The scriptures, because the scriptures is a knowledge revealed by consciousness via Ishvara, the Lord, pure sattva. And that is the greatest symbol of the self, because it comes from the self and it has the potential to reveal the self to the individual, okay, as the individual's own self, okay? So that is the whole process of Upasana, which gradually goes to become Nididhyasana, which is holding the mind on the scriptures as presented by the scriptures. Is that okay? Clear? We move on then. The value of yoga. Yoga is connecting the mind with the self. Well, now we are talking about yoga, and yoga has many different faces. It seems to be in the experiential action of experiential spiritual world. Yoga is connecting, is joining, is bring the mind to God, bring the mind to something, bring the mind to the self. So literally, yoga means connecting the mind. Okay, so what I was saying. So yoga, when we say yoga, because we know that Vedanta is also a sort of yoga, but it's not a dualistic yoga, okay? So it's a yoga that does not require anything to connect anything with anything else, okay? So there is no path, and it's a yoga of no connection, okay? It's a pathless path. It's a yoga of no connection, as one of our Mahatmas in the past said, okay? So Yana yoga is also yoga, but it's not a connecting yoga. It is understanding, contemplating and understanding that the self does not need to be connected because I am that self. Huh? But yeah, of course, it's easier said than really accepted, no, and deeply understood. So, but generally speaking, we have yoga, and yoga has a certain value. What is the value of yoga? Claudio, can you tell me the value of yoga? You are a teacher of meditation. Meditation is what we mean yoga. What is the value of yoga?
I think it's preparing the mind. It's make the mind sattvic, so you can be qualified for hearing and learning.
Yeah. So Vedanta does not say, okay, now there is no point in yoga, there is no point in meditation or concentration. You understand? It says, no, we accept, we have a conception for Vipassana yoga because it brings about a very important qualification, which is one-pointedness of mind, which you will allow to the individual to control one's thoughts and sense organs and organs of actions, organs of reception, and so on. Yeah? There are several qualifications involved with the D, the third D. Yeah? We begin with discrimination, dispassion, and then discipline. Discipline is all about Vipassana, okay? Of course, that you can reach discipline without Vipassana as well, but this is another subject, and we are not going to discuss again whether Kami Yoga is better than Vipassana or Vipassana is better than Yoga, okay? So we say we can use both. So but the self cannot be connected because the self is not an object, is the subject, and the subject is beyond the range of the mind. So how are you going to connect? You connect by thinking deliberately about the teachings of Vedanta. Easily, simply put, you just make an effort to analyze the logic as presented by the teachings of Vedanta. There are only two possible thought objects for the mind. There are two possible thought objects for the mind: the self, which is consciousness, and the reflected consciousness. Okay, the reflected consciousness is the phenomenal aspect of the self, appearing as a jiva with 3 bodies or 5 sheets or 3 states and so on. Yoga is, this is the ultimate yoga. Okay, is a complete absorption of the mind in one thought. So when the mind is really disciplined to the point that it no longer jumps here and there like a monkey or like a small children jumping and running, okay? So when the mind is under control, only then the mind can be in total, complete absorption on one thing thought. And the thought that we want to finally enough hold our mind into is, I am limitless conscious awareness and not the body-mind complex, okay? And to get to that, of course, we often go through the experience of samadhi. Samadhi is when the mind is really empty, when the thoughts are not compulsively appearing in our scope of awareness, when the thoughts just subside, and then there is this beautiful space of silence. So that is a effort, the result of our efforts to control the mind. It's an empty mind, it's a very peaceful mind, and without us going to Nirvikalpa Samadhi, from there, we more easily we can bring the mind to the teachings of Vedanta. As I often say, the problem is that when we experience the bliss of silence, very often we don't want to disturb the mind with doing the sadhana of Vedanta, That's why it's so hard for people in the world of yoga meditation to understand that once the mind is really, really silent, you should disturb the mind by contemplating on the teachings or the Mahavakyas as presented by Vedanta, because only then you can address the fundamental problem. If we do not address the fundamental problem, we're going to enjoy that peaceful state, but the mind is going to modify again. Why? Because we have never addressed the fundamental problem, which was ignorance, right? So therefore, we need to sacrifice that peaceful state and do our job because we want to get the job done and in its base, in its foundation, so that the mind can later on be naturally quiet, because ignorance, the root cause of mental disturbance, was neutralized. All thoughts should converge on this topic like a magnifying glass focusing the parallel rays of the sun. Each thought should deal with some aspect of the self-awareness, and the meditator should make sure that similar thoughts do not break the flow of self-thought. So we want to keep our mind in that kind of flow. It's a flow of thoughts around the teachings. You are contemplating, you are getting there, you are trying to really understand, what is this consciousness and why I am this consciousness and why this consciousness is free and independent of every experience. So you are just trying to come to that clear scene that I am that and I am free. And of course, other thoughts like, okay, but what are we going to eat for dinner tonight? Those thoughts, they should not be allowed. No, otherwise they break the flow. Once I heard a few years back, Paramarthananda defined Nididhyasana as a flow of homogeneous, or similar thoughts of the same nature, occupying the mind and just all around the self, all around the inquiring to the self as my very nature. It is something that it holds the same vibration. It's only that kind of thought, without mixing up with denser thoughts. In one of his greatest works, Aparokshanubhuti, direct knowledge experience, which is present below with commentary, Shankara customized Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga, sometimes called Raja Yoga, or the Eightfold Path, a path of 8 steps leading to Samadhi, a thought-free state of the mind. The Buddha's Eightfold Path is another formulation of Ashtanga Yoga. And although Buddhist paths do not offer a systematic means of self-knowledge compared to Vedanta, they do offer useful practice and disciplines that can reorient and prepare the mind for discrimination. So that is a fact. I think we have no objection about that, because I met quite a few people coming from the Buddhism, and they did a lot of meditation. They never understood about Ishvara and Ishvara's laws, and they never really understood of the self. But one thing they understood, which was about good manners and meditation, until they go into the nothingness or emptiness that they believe to be their goal. So of course, in that process, the mind is going to develop several good qualifications. And who knows, maybe here and there, one of these Buddhists stumble into self-knowledge, The first stage of Raja Yoga, or Upasana, is called Yama, control of the sense. The yoga is meant to use willpower to keep the sense from engaging in their objects because they produce attachment. So now, look at the situation of the poor yogi. The yogi is meant to use willpower to control the senses. The yogi from engaging the object, because engagement with objects produce attachment. Attachment produce mental disturbance because you want to keep, you want to get, you want to avoid. Okay, so and then there is mental disturbance. So we want to do that. The poor yoga has to do that using willpower. So when we come to Vedanta, we have a huge advantage because we say, okay, so mental control of sense is important, and willpower is very, very important. But willpower alone is very, very weak, let's say. It's a very difficult battle if you only have the sword of willpower. You need the sword of willpower and the one of knowledge, understanding. So how are you going to do this? Controlling the sense, controlling the thoughts. You're going to use willpower, and you're going to follow the logic presented by Vedanta to understand all the defects and limitations of all objects of experience, to the extent that you develop vairagya, this passion towards object, and then your fight with those vasanas is a much easier fight to win, because you brought understanding, knowledge, and you make it the best ally of willpower, which is definitely needed as well. But here it's presenting from the angle of a yoga, Raja Yoga, and then the yogi has to go through the struggle because he has only one sword, which is willpower. Okay, Shankara suggests a simpler and more effective way. It says, see the self as complete rather than incomplete. So now, here is the ultimate weapon, it's ultimate weapon, but it is a weapon that is not much effective unless someone is highly qualified. So if you, because this is the ultimate truth, I am Satchitananda, I'm a whole, full, and complete, limitless consciousness. Okay, so this is the ultimate teaching. So you can say, you have to know that the easiest way is to remember that you are whole, full, and complete. Therefore, you don't need to control the mind. Okay, the mind is just doing its thing. So you just need to remember who and what you are and how full, how purna we are. So what I was saying before is that Kami Yoga and a lot of other aspects of the teachings of Vedanta are going to analyze our experience in respect to the objects, and it's going to point out the defects and limitations of all objects until naturally we understand the futility. So that is not the ultimate teaching, but it's absolutely necessary, in an intermediary stage, so that it helps us to control the mind. If the mind is ready to hold on to the final teachings and say, I am Purna, limitless, whole, full, and complete consciousness, therefore, there's nothing to control here, okay? So, good for you, okay? Otherwise, we use the tools we have from Karma Yoga to control the mind, to develop those aspects of discipline, mental discipline, okay? This is definitely a simpler and more effective way, but only for highly qualified people to see the self. Before we see the self, we want to control the sense organs, control the mind, control the organs of action. It is recommended that you really understand how the fact and limited the objects and the fact that there is no happiness inherent on any object of experience. These are basic teachings that are going to help us to control the sense, the mind, and our instruments of action From the self's point of view, the sense is not a problem, of course not. They do not struggle to experience, of course not. They are automatically hooked up with their respective objects by the gunas. This happens unconsciously, and that is a fact. So, and then why we try to control the mind? Huh? Because the mind is not yet prepared to accept the final statements of Vedanta. And then the mind has to be controlled so that the mind can develop one-pointedness, so that it can go through the ultimate teachings of Vedanta to understand the final teachings. I am limitless, and there is no question for me of any control. You understand? And I am whole, I am full. Everything that the mind will do does not affect me, because I am the illuminator of the mind, of the gunas, of the thoughts, of the tendencies, of the vasanas. I reveal everything in my mind, in my light, okay? So before the mind can understand that, the mind needs to do what? It needs to control, disciplines. Because we need to create the proper environment, atmosphere, mental atmosphere, so that we can do our inquiry following those teachings of Vedanta. So this is preparedness, discipline, control of discipline, mental and sense of reception, sense of actions. That is going to help us to develop certain aspects, positive aspects, of our personality and so on. And then in the end, we're going to look back and say, oh my God, from the self's point of view, okay, the mind was not a problem. The mind was jumping here and there, and it's not a problem, because now I'm here, I know that I'm the self. The mind can jump as much as it wants, and I know it does not affect me. Yeah. But now that I know, I realize that the mind is not a problem. But before I know, the mind becomes an apparent obstruction, because it's not going to allow you to follow the logic in a contemplative manner until you understand your true nature, and then you are free from the conditions of the mind. You understand these subtle aspects of the teaching. It's important we understand. There is no contradiction. Okay, a lot of people say, oh, why am I doing all of that? Because in the end, I am living less consciousness, and nothing really affects me and the mind and the thoughts and the states and this and that and the gunas. Who cares? And then what do we do? Because the mind is not prepared to really assimilate the knowledge, it superimposes this knowledge, or co-opts the knowledge, and say, yes, I am the self and I'm free. But no, the person did not understand that really, because its mind was not properly developed to understand that. It's very common. People do it. Very common. People who do not have the patience and the humbleness to go through the process of preparedness. So everything happens by itself. The sense organs are going to connect its respective objects. The vasanas are going to compel all of that dynamic activity, and it's happening. And if we are not identified with any of that, and then we are good to go. But if we are identified, and then we need to create a certain mental environment so that we can do our manana and nididhyasana. Okay, I'm not going over these other commentaries because I explained already in which way in which way it can be dangerous to say the self is free, so we don't need to do this, we don't need to do that, because that is true. But in most of the case, it may not help. Therefore, the idea that I'm whole and complete will prevent gratuitous attempts to produce experiential happiness and control and so on. Furthermore, it so happens that experiential happiness is actually the bliss of the self, although. So we are talking here about the self does not really need to do anything, because none of these things, these mental conditions, are going to affect the fullness and the completion of the self. But we know that the mind, when it's disturbed, the self does not have a very nice experience as a jiva. No? And then it's natural that we want to do something to make our minds more sattvic, because a sattvic mind is a happy mind. And we prefer to be an enjoyer. So we don't really need to do that. But when we come to Vedanta, we are told that be careful with experiential bliss, because our goal is not experiential bliss. Our goal is knowledge. And when we get too much attached to mental purification or cultivation or processing and clearing vasanas, this process of purification and refinement, because the jiva is never really going to be perfect. And as it becomes more and more sattvic, it experiences more and more bliss. And it's most of the times it becomes a little bit of a trap, because one easily can feel like, okay, so now I know what experiential happiness through the mind is, but that is not freedom, because as we know, once we suspend our effort, the mind turns to change, to modify again. And since the ignorance was not addressed, so we are back more or less where we were before. And furthermore, James says, furthermore, it so happens that experiential happiness is actually the bliss, the nature of the self, I would say, okay? Although it seems to be inherent to certain objects and activities or certain states of the mind. So the fullness, bliss is fullness. The sense of bliss comes from the recognition or experience of fullness, okay? Of oneness, of fullness, of emptiness, howsoever we want to see it. So this is the nature of the self. And once you know you are the self, and once you understand what it means to be the self, and then your mind is more or less resolved in a certain bliss, which it does not require constant maintenance or effort to control the state. The mind is naturally in that state, because you have digested and understood and processed, and claimed your fullness as the self. And then you are not hungry anymore for experience, for going to consume experience. So it's the nature of the self, this fullness, bliss, and happiness. So Vedanta suggests that the meditator short-circuit the karmic process, forego indirect object happiness, and take the happiness direct from within by contemplating on the self, following the logic as presented by the Upanishads. Whatever the mind contemplates, so on it becomes. So that is a nice statement, but when we contemplate on a new house, we don't really become a house. We become obsessed with a new house. But that is going maybe bring all our energies to manifest this purchase, because I need to purchase a new house, okay? So we may say we become, we produce, we manifest the house, because we focus so much on the house. But we are never going to be the house. We are never going to be whatsoever we want to accomplish. Yeah? But when the mind is taken to contemplate on the self, it becomes the self because the mind is the self. You understand? So you are bringing the mind to contemplate on something that it is already your very nature, and it's full, whole, and complete. It's important we know the meaning. And then meditate on the self is not going to take on something else. Therefore, you become the self without becoming, because you have been the self all through trying to become the self. Yeah? The self is bliss. The mind becomes full of bliss when it contemplates on the self. Now let's see the redefinition of yoga. The steps in order are control the sense, control the mind, renunciation, silence, space, time, posture, restraining the root, bodily equipoise, firmness of vision, control of vital force, withdrawal of the mind, concentration, self-contemplation, and complete absorption in the self. So this is a definition or a redefinition? I don't know. So let's look through this one. Restraining the sense with the knowledge that everything is the self is properly called yama. It should be practiced continuously. So what makes the sense to connect with its respective object? We say that the sense automatically connects. They do automatically connect, but it's not really automatic, because we can see many things, but it is our mind, our desire and fear that is going to determine where to connect. You understand? So it's a mind that's going to direct, okay, I have many things here, but there is something there that catches my interest. Therefore, among all these objects, my mind is going to grab that object, okay, through the five senses. Yeah? Restraining the sense is something that can be attained by bringing the mind to contemplate on the self, by understanding that everything is the self, and understanding that the self appears as many infinite numbers of name, colors, and forms. And all of that is a superimposition on that which is the fundamental nature of all names and forms, meaning to say everything is the self, okay? We can restrain from that perspective. This is the ultimate way to restrain the self. Again, the sense. Again, we can restrain the sense by understanding that all of these name, colors, and forms are the manifestation of Maya. It is what we call Ishvara, okay? And Ishvara is the real owner of all these objects, and the Ishvara is going to present me what I deserve, because this is meritorious, or meritorious, how you say, meritorious system. Yeah, I get my prabhada karma according to my merits. Okay, so there are different ways, as I said before, understanding that the objects of desire do not really contain the happiness. The happiness I'm seeking and searching is based on knowledge. It's based on my mental condition, which requires knowledge. So this restraining, this controlling of the sense with the knowledge is much more powerful than the restraining of the sense with willpower. So now there is a redefinition of yoga, saying like, okay, instead of just doing willpower, you may keep your willpower, but do use knowledge, okay? And knowledge can be used to control the sense from different angles, different levels. The number two, the continuous flow. The continuous flow of the self-thought to the exclusion of all other thoughts is called niyama. When regularly practiced, calls great bliss. So we bring one flow of one single thought to the exclusion of all others, and the thought is the thought above the self. So what kind of thought is this? Because I have practiced this for so long, you understand? I have practiced because I was under the instructions of Nisargadatta Maharaj, although I never met him in person. So I was just doing my work, holding on to the self as I am, I exist, I am, I exist, I am. And I could feel existence, I could see consciousness shine. But this continuous flow, it brings great bliss. It purifies the mind like nothing other. You know, it's a great, I mean, you probably heard me saying that if there is one of the greatest symbol of the self is the thought feeling, I am, I exist, you know, because it's the nature of the self is consciousness, it's I amness and existence, you know. If you hold on that, you can sense experientially, you sense your conscious existence shining, you know, as to the degree that as the mind becomes more and more silent, okay? So this self-thought, the mind is already purified, you know, you're in a kind of samadhi, no other thoughts are entering your field. This is called niyama. It calls great bliss, yes, but we know that our goal is not just experiential bliss, it's knowledge. Renunciation is abandoning the belief in the reality of the phenomenal universe by seeing that it is the ever conscious self. This is immediate liberation, okay? So this is the ultimate renunciation, is when you get this understanding that everything is consciousness and you are that consciousness. This is self-knowledge, and to the extent that it is hard and fast and firmly understood, it produces a state of renunciation, you know, towards in respect to the objects that most people are chasing, no, objects of desires and fears. So it's abandoning the belief this phenomenal object is real, you know, and you abandon that by seeing that everything is yourself, is consciousness, and you are limitless and complete. This is it's a renunciation as a byproduct of self-knowledge moksha, you know. I mean, you are at that point, you have this hard and fast self-knowledge. So all of that is an effort to redefine yoga. Number 4, known only to the sage, congenital silence is that from which speech and the mind rebound. Observing silence by restraining speech is recommended for those who do not know who they are. You know, it's bringing in silence, observing silence, restraining from speech. One time somebody asked me, Ramana Maharaj, so please, you are very miserly in words, with words. And when you say, you say something in codes that later on has to be decodified, you know, give me something good, give me something clear, give me instruction. And then he says, restrain and moderate speech, food, and sleep. You know, moderation, restrain yourself and speak only when necessary, eat with moderation and sleep with moderation. Most probably because the Indian people, the culture there, people are more tamasic, or they are good sleepers. And they can sleep even with a pillow made out of stone on the streets. So I say, so don't sleep, don't, overdo with that Anandamaya kosha for deep sleep, because you're going to remain too tamasic in the day. So observing silence by restraining speech. Number 5, the true posture is the spontaneous and continuous meditation on the self, and not a meditation on object that destroys one happiness. So posture, this whole thing about posture, there might be different reasons. Mark has done a lot of yoga, so there must be a lot of reason, Lynn as well, from what I understood, of why to sit like this and like that. I believe that is, so you have to be in a position that it's not much conducive to falling asleep, possibly, I believe. But ultimately, the posture is not going to do much to us. What's going to do to us is our effort in controlling the mind, and as we say, we need knowledge, we need understanding. The posture is a posture that somehow your body feels comfortable. So, because if you have a back pain and you want to sit on a lotus posture and it hurts even more your leg, your pain, your back, so your attention, your mind is not going to be that happy, and this meditation is going to be more difficult. The perfect merger, number 6, that perfect measure of the mind into the self, the support of the universe, and the origin of all beings is known as the accomplished posture. Okay, so now there is, what is the posture? The posture is a merger of the mind into the self. So this is kind of alternative. So for anybody too much fixate on the posture, James is saying that, I think it's James that presents this redefinition of yoga. Who knows? Who can tell me that? Aparokshanubhuti. I don't know if it is one of them. Huh?
This Alindo, this comes from the text Aparokshanubhuti.
Okay.
It's right towards the end of the text.
Okay.
They redefine the 8 steps of yoga into Vedantic terms.
Yeah.
And how it would be.
This is
how it
from
would be Vedantically.
Thank you, from Shankara, because I'm not familiarized with these texts, but when I heard that it's from Shankara, I really want to look into it, because sooner or later, I'm going to need more text. And I like this traditional text.
It's a great text, actually. It's really great. I've got Chinmayananda's version, and it's brilliant.
Yeah, very nice. Possibly I have the book, but I left so many books in India. I mean, I keep leaving things around the world. Now I left several books as well in Italy. Okay, this I'm going to take a note about this text here, especially for my people in Brazil. Soon I'm going to need a new one. I'm going to get somebody beginning translating into Portuguese. Which one we are? The perfect measure of the mind. Okay. Here's the best posture. Yeah. That limitless awareness in which all existence is root should be the basis of a yogin's restraint of mind. So what do we make of this? That limitless awareness in which all existence root should be the base. So your meditations should be based on this concept of the nature of consciousness, awareness, as limitlessness. So you need to come from limitlessness if you want to accomplish limitlessness. You can never come from limitation because from limitation, anything we do is going to be of a limited nature and we're never going to produce limitlessness. This is a very good point. It should be the root, the base. We come from limitlessness. My nature is limitless awareness. Is the base from which I'm going to restrain and control the mind and so on. Very nice. Number 8, absorption of the limbs of the subtle body in limitless awareness is true equipoise, not the mere balancing of the physical limbs. Absorption of the limbs of the subtle body in limitless awareness is true equipoise. So what do you make of limbs of the subtle body?
Could that be like mind, intellect, ego, and, memory?
Yeah. So we want to not deal with the physical body, and its organs of reception, organs of actions, and so on. We don't even want to deal much with the pranas. You want to work on the subtle body level, okay? by controlling, by keeping in mind that your intellect, your mind, and the way this machinery functions, and you have to resolve that into limitless awareness, So this is the true equipoise, absorption of all these functions of the subtle body. You have to absorb it all or resolve it all in consciousness, all this consciousness, the thoughts and the sense and the ego, and so very nice. The noblest vision is the conversion of the samsaric way of seeing into the non-dual vision. Not zigging at the tip of the nose with the physical eyes. Yeah. So this is he's making fun of the yogis, So if you want to have a nice vision, don't keep looking at the tip of your nose, but have the vision of Vedanta, non-dual vision, seeing everything as consciousness, not gazing into the tip of the nose, and so on. Direct your attention to the place where the seer, the sight, and the seeing are known different. Again, not to the tip of the nose. Bring your attention not to the tip of the nose. I mean, it may help to bring your attention to the tip of the nose, because at least you are making an effort to develop one-pointedness. But there is not much about that, So, but if you direct your attention on which the seer, the one who's looking the tip of the nose, the sight and the seeing process, the seer, the sight, and the seeing are they merge, they collapse, they are known different. Is a true effort to direct your attention, not to the physical tip of the nose. Pranayama is the restraint of modifications of the mind brought about by understanding that the mind is the self alone. Again, the mind is the self. The self is full, whole, and complete. So people who do pranayama, they understood that there is a connection between the mind and the pranas and the breath. And then they are going to play different restraints or practices, to control and modify the pranas, the breath. And that is going to affect the mind. But here it says the best pranayama is this restraint of modifications of the mind. So how direct this pranayama is? Because this is really, it is pranayama, but it's not really pranayama. Pranayama is to get to a certain state by controlling, by work on the prana level. So you work on the prana level, and then your mind is going to benefit by certain efforts to regulate or control the prana. Here, he's saying, Shankara is saying that the ultimate pranayama you do directly with the mind. Why? Because you have the knowledge, you understood the complete knowledge from Ishvara level, from Jiva level, and from Satya level. You have the knowledge, and you know that you are the self, everything is the self, and then you do a different kind of pranayama. You just work directly on the mind level, because you resolve, you understand that the mind is the self. When you understand that the mind is the self, and then the pranas, they harmonize. So if the pranas are not in harmony, it's because there is mental disturbance. Have we noticed? I think we all know that if we have mental disturbance, the pranas, they get as well, yeah? Very much affected. It reminds me, there was a period of my life in the United States when I was meditating more spontaneously, as you probably heard me say. I was getting a little bit surprised when the breath was stopping, and I did not know very much why the breath was stopping. So that is another example. You can begin with the prana to create a certain state of the mind, or you can work directly on the mind, and then you better know that the breath may stop. Don't be afraid, you're not going to die. Depends on, and this represents as the ultimate pranayama, working direct, coming from the mind. Rishaka, breathing out, is the negation of the phenomenal world. And the thought, I am the self, is puraka, breathing in. So there are two sorts of pranas. Pranas out, pranas in. They have different names in Sanskrit. And then he is addressing them. This is negation and this is affirmation. The steadiness of mind that comes from this practice called kumbhaka, restraint of breath. This is the true pranayama, not the yoga torture of the nose. So this is really brilliant. So when you are focusing on breathing out and breathing in, so just make this breathing out vital air attached to the knowledge, understand that the phenomenal world is unreal. You are negating the world. You are just breathing out, negating the world. You see, you are doing your pranayama, but you are attaching knowledge to it. You are just attaching. So you're just breathing out, attaching to it the negation of reality of the phenomenal world. Okay? And then you negate it and you bring the negation and the affirmation that I am the self. Okay? Now, and I am, in this thought, I am the self is the breathing in. You negate the world as the not self and you breathe in, affirming I am the self, the only reality. The steadiness of mind that comes from this practice is the true kumbhaka. It's restraint of the breath by the means of yana. He's saying he's attaching yana to all this action experience practice of the yoga. Very, very nice. I have done this text in Tiruvannamalai some years back, but I did not remember much this redefinition of the yoga. We went through it, but I haven't had as many insights as I'm having now. I did not read it because I had a busy day today, but it's brilliant. It's so beautiful. Ish, there are so many others. We're gonna have to leave this for next week. I thought we are going to finish. It's we're gonna have fun with this one next week because it's really nice. So let me see where we stopped here. The breathing out, negation. Okay. Okay, doke. tomorrow I'm busy today. Tomorrow we are hitting the road to go to another city, 6 hours from here to do the procedure on my left shoulder now, to see if I if I heal the shoulder without having to do surgery. We're just gonna stay 4 days out because I have to do applications of laser and so on. Claudio, all is good?
Yeah.
Yeah, did you enjoy?
Yeah.
And now you're gonna
course.
have to reformulate your yoga, huh? Your meditations to your students, huh?
Totally, little by little. It's a long-term project.
Yeah.
Arlindo, will you be available for Thursday or no?
Yes, I am available. I'm gonna be on a different seat, but I'm always available. Yeah, I'm gonna send the video. Okay. Mark,
Yeah.
when
Yeah,
you
brilliant
come,
stuff, Arlindo. Many thanks.
when you come to visit me,
When?
yeah.
I'm planning on November, hopefully in November.
Okay.
That's the idea.
Hopefully.
I've got to wind up my season here because I'm very busy here at the moment. But by then, hopefully everything will be sorted and I can come for a month or two.
Okay. Very nice. Today I'm having an irrigation system installed here that's going to make my life much easier as well, you know, on my land, on my gardens and so on. Okay, my dear friends. So we say goodbye with Om. Purna Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, my friends. You know what? I think we're gonna change. I said before that it should be at least 5. Right now it's only 4 is enough, as long as the 4 are really into it. Okay. Okay, see you next time.
Thank you, Arlindo.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Arlindo. Good luck in the next few days.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.